Shalom and welcome to this week's Living Torah. It's been quite a week. I want to first of all say thank you to Bill and Kimberly, Battlefield Assembly in Messiah, Rossville, Georgia. Great weekend working with Hanok, and we had a good time. We spent about 9 hours, I think it was about 9 hours together on at the building that they have on Shabbat, plus talking prior to and afterwards. So I came back a little bit on the exhausted side, but that's a good thing. Also, my thanks to a number of young people, young adults that sent regards regarding just said I was missed by them at Revive. I won't go into anything from there, but I just want to say, if in case they're listening, those emails or texts or whatever. I know you guys don't do emails, so it's probably a message. I think messenger, whatever it was. I just want to say how much it meant to me. We continue to look at the possibility of war, and it appears this morning that Iran has backed off a little bit, but this is literally on a moment by moment what we could see in the coming days. We are approaching very rapidly. In fact, it's next Tuesday, I believe, the 9th of Av. If you're not familiar with the 9th of Av, please go online and look. There are many events through history, Hebrew, Jewish history, that have been attributed to the 9th of Av. Number one was the spies coming back from the land of Canaan, with 10 of them having a bad report. The first and second temple, also events that happened at the time of the Shoah, the Holocaust. These were all tied around. Even Christopher Columbus, sailing the ocean blue in whatever year it was. I didn't get a lot of sleep this weekend, so I'm still trying to catch up on that, and I cannot remember my metaphor of the ocean blue. So that's just the way it is. Look it up. So these things are all tied to the 9th of Av. What will happen from there, I do not know. 15 years ago, actually right about now, I did not go back and look at the dates actually, but 15 years ago, I was leading a tour group to Israel, and it was prior to the Gaza pullout. If you look over my shoulder right here, my right shoulder, there is an orange ribbon. And that is one of the ribbons that I picked up while I was there. The orange was the color of Gush Katif, kind of their preferred color, I guess it was. So we had ribbons and all kinds of things all over the country. There were prayer meetings, there were gatherings, and the typical feeling of Israelis in that day was something's going to happen. There's no way that IDF soldiers will go into Gaza, into Gush Katif, and take Jewish people out of their homes against their will. Well, it would not be but just a few weeks later, right after the 9th of Av, that exact thing would happen. The story of Gaza is a tragic one. Hanok and I just did he was here, I was with him, 3 presentations that he did, and I actually sat down and did an interview with him that is some things that maybe have not been talked about. So that's available on my website for those that help support this ministry. It is titled October 7th, the day that revealed the world. October 7th did not change the world. October 7th revealed what was already in the world. And so with this, Gaza, what I did not know and I really wanted to bring out is that prior to 1967, Gaza was under the control of the Egyptians, which means that every single person that was born in Gaza was given an Egyptian passport, not an Israeli passport. Israel didn't have anything to do with Gaza. It was not until 1967, the Six-Day War, that came into play. And so at that point in time, there were some 300,000 Gazans, Arabs living in Gaza. Today, at the time of the breakout, and by the way, remember that there was a permanent ceasefire that was in effect until October 6th of last year. It was not until October 7th, 6:30 in the morning, that ceasefire was broken, not from Israel, not by Israel, but by the Arabs. They're not Palestinians. There's no such thing as a Palestinian. Sorry, AOC, but there isn't. So this war began unprovoked by those living in Gaza who were living, we could say, in freedom, except for the fact that they had made the terrible mistake of electing Hamas to be their government. Now, when you elect a terrorist, it's like being on a school playground, and you decide, well, we're going to have elections of who is going to control the playground, and you decide that you're going to elect the biggest bully that there is in the whole school. Don't be surprised what the outcome is. And that is what has been happening in Gaza. So during the time of before the Gaza pullout, there were 2.2, or today before the war started, 2.2 million Gazans living in Gaza. This never had to happen. There's not a single death that needed to happen, quote unquote, needed to happen. And remember that as we watch the news today, it is not just the Ariel Sharon administration. It is the pressure that came upon Ariel Sharon. Now, he had the final say-so. I'm going to give him the absolute responsibility, and the reason that he laid in a hospital in a coma for however long it was, was a spectacle that you do not mess with his word, with God's word. But the pressure of the United States during the George W. Bush administration upon Israel to pull out of Gaza is what we are dealing with right now. So the 9th of Av, next Tuesday, the reason I'm going into this a little bit more, this gives you time between this Shabbat through the 9th of Av to pray protection over the land, over the people of the land. We have done numerous things. Our ministry has done numerous things in the last few days to help with that, including increasing security and surveillance for one of the projects that I work with. I'm sorry I'm not able to go into details there, but a lot of terrorism in the area, a lot of vulnerable people. And so I received a message last week. Could we help with increasing the security? It didn't take me but hours to send that money on. So thank you to each one of you who continue to support us as a ministry, continue to support Israel through us. It is deeply appreciated. We go into this week into the Torah portion. I know that I didn't get the two Torah portions together last week. When I have somebody like Hanok coming in, my focus is there on the people we're going to be ministering to, and I just kind of rushed through that one, did not check it, and here we go. But now we're in Devarim, all right? So, in Devarim, words. That's what the word Devarim means, is words. Now, if we go back to Bamidbar, all right, we still have the word words, so we're in a different way. But it says that these are the words that Moshe spoke to all Israel on the far side of the Yarden. The setting of this has always intrigued me. Is something that I've thought about many, many times. A group of people that 40 years ago have followed this kind of obscure person that has walked back into Egypt and said, I have heard from the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and your time in this in bondage is over, and it is time for you to be released. And he gives the four wills, and then it doesn't take long before the wheels on the bus kind of begin to fall off, and a few week journey on the outset, on the outside, a 3-week journey turns into about 40 years as they go through the trials and tribulations of themselves. It would have been very simple for them to have just walked out of Egypt, have followed his instructions, walked into the promised land, and by this time that Moshe is giving this message to them, they would be living in peace and security, having defeated all of their enemies. But now, all of those that refused, they sided with the 10 spies. Those people there, we're like grasshoppers in their eyes. No, you're like grasshoppers in your own eyes. What happened is, because of their refusal to obey the word of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, it is now, it is now their children and their grandchildren that are preparing to go into Israel, into Canaan, and are now preparing to do the battles that their parents and grandparents should have done. Interesting correlation today, in that the soldiers, of who I know numerous, the soldiers in Gaza, in the north, these are men and women who are the children and grandchildren of some of the soldiers that took Jewish people out of their homes. I don't want to pass judgment here, because you are in the IDF, you're in the army, you don't have a say-so in what goes on. I once again would give total and complete blame to leadership for the soldiers who did these horrendous things. I've heard the stories of the tears in which were flowing down their cheeks as they were having to drag Jewish people out of their homes. And now it is the children and grandchildren that are doing the battles. So my question is, what battles are we dealing with today that we refuse to fight? And because of that, we'll pass those battles to another generation. Today we have numerous things happening in the United States specifically. This is where I kind of base a lot of what is going on. But we see this in France through the Olympics. We've seen this in all over the world. The battles, the wars that are going on. How are we dealing with that? Where are we looking toward? Are we just, are people, as I have heard through the years, and this is one that when I hear this, the spirit of slap comes all over me. Well, I just don't really want to, I hope his kingdom doesn't come, right away, because I've read that that's going to be kind of a difficult time leading up to it, and I just don't really want to go through it. You wimp. What's wrong with you? That there is a battle that is going to be faced, and what that person is saying, and I've had this conversation, what that person is saying is, I do not have the backbone or the love for my children and grandchildren to stand and fight the battle, but I'm just going to take a sideline here and allow them to fight it later on. I have no respect for someone like that. So in verse 6, let me go down from there. Verse 6, Adonai spoke to us in Horeb. He said, "You have lived long enough by this mountain. Turn, get moving, go to the hill country of the Emorai and all the places near there in the Arava, the hill country, the Shephelah, the Negev, and by the seashore, the places, the land of the Canaanite and the Lebanon, as far as the great river, the Euphrates River. I have set the land before you. Go in, take possession of the land Yudhevave swore to give to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, Yaakov, and their descendants after them. You've lived here long enough. You've been around this mountain long enough." Okay, what does that mean to us today? You've been around this mountain long enough. Let me go back 24 years to an event that was an event. It was probably the greatest non-event, the most remembered non-event ever to happen on planet Earth, and that was Y2K. That was like, everybody was like, "Oh no, the world is going to end," and it didn't. But then it's been like the disaster of the year since then. It's been the end of the world every year. This is going to be the last Passover. Excuse me. Still haven't got my voice back. This is going to be the last Passover. This is going to be, this is the year. This is the year. No, it's the blood moons and the this, and I'm not making fun of anything. But what's the purpose of all of those things? What was the purpose of Y2K? What was the purpose of I believe false prophecy? Okay, this was this was the Passover. What was the purpose of the blood moons? What is the purpose of what we see today happening? It is if you consider it as a picture, it is going around the mountain, but never understanding the purpose of going around the mountain. So if you go around the mountain, but you don't figure out why you went around the mountain, you're destined to just go around the mountain over and over and over again. And that is what has happened through these years. Let me throw in a title of a book years ago by a man who was a mentor to me, Dr. James Dobson. I used to listen to James Dobson every morning, Focus on the Family. I listened to Chuck Swindoll, various ones. And really, I mean, I don't know that I had a lot of parenting skills in life, having grown up, as kind of a little dysfunctional there. But I learned a lot from Dr. James Dobson. One of his books that I love the title is Turn Your Heart Toward Home. See, the purpose of going around the mountain is to turn your heart toward home. That you go around that mountain enough times that you figure out, I'm wearing a rut into, you look up the second or third time you've been around the mountain, it's like, there's my footprints again. Wow, there's my footprints. I'm digging a path. At first, it's it's just a couple of footprints, and then 3 or 4 times later, it's a bit of a path, and then it looks like a roadbed. Eventually, it turns into a rut. Eventually, that rut becomes a grave, because you can go around the mountain so many times. You dig the rut so deep with your footprints that you cannot get out. And the rut becomes your grave. We need to look at the world events today and consider that what is happening is to turn our hearts toward home. If we go back to the 1940s, 1930s. Some of you have heard me talk about a guy. His name was Jabotinsky. Go study the words of Rabbi Jabotinsky. He was going around Europe. He was telling the Jews of Europe, it's time to go home. It's time to leave here. You need to go back to Israel. But yet somehow they, decided that, well, this is where I've been planted. This is the place that I've been planted in life, and well, I know that one day we will be going back to Israel, but it's just not today. How many of those people with that attitude died in the gas ovens of Auschwitz, Birkenfeld, Ravensbrück, Sachsenhausen? How many people died in the gas ovens because they refused to turn their hearts toward home? Now, I know, guys, I know that for you, for me, I could get on a El Al jet probably within hours and fly to Israel. I would have to take my American passport, which means I would have it stamped, and about 30 days or about 90 days later, I have to leave. There's no way at this moment in time for me to have permanent residency. There's no way for me to have citizenship in Israel. And do you know I'm totally okay with that? But see, though I cannot move my physical body to home, my heart can be there. I can turn my heart toward home. Is it possible, just throw this out, that when the opportunity arises for you and I to be home, that it will only be those who have already turned their hearts toward home that will be allowed to go? So for those who have had no interest in the land, I found it appalling that two people came to Hanok as he was traveling, as he was talking about the events that have happened in Gaza, and said, I have no idea where this was not in the news. You could have watched The View, and I don't suggest that. You could have watched The View and figure out what was going on in Gaza. It's not just two people out of a large number. I was with him when we had Q&A, and it's amazing. He talked to me about some of the other questions that had been asked and how far out in the so-called left field, or whichever one whichever one that is in the euphemism. really doing bad at that one today. These questions were like, what? You ask what? So people that have really no idea of what is going on in Israel, but I mean, he literally had someone that looked at him and said, well, our congregation supports Israel. He said, well, what do you do? He said, nothing. What? I'm not making this up. Okay, we support Israel. We don't do anything, but we support Israel. That's not even getting in the stadium, folks. So, turning our hearts toward home. Most of this first chapters of the Torah portion is a reminder, a recap, a rehashing of the events that happened during these last 40 years. And I find it, what I'm kind of seeing right now as I'm reading through this, something that I think I've felt in the past, but this year it's a little bit different. I'm hearing this tension in Moshe's voice, in his words. He's I don't know if it's anger, if it's disappointment, if it's all the above. I don't know. But there's this, because see, in essence, he's talking to a people that are not even there. He's talking and going through all of these things as if they are there, but yet most of them have probably died out. And so he's talking to a generation that has only heard about these things through, around the campfire at night kind of thing. They don't really know. But I can understand this. I can understand that tension in his voice, in his words. That he has poured his whole being into these people. For what? For what? What does he receive in the end? A nice burial? No, not really. I mean, he's going to climb a mountain and be buried alone. They're going to grieve him, sure, but he's going to take a walk by himself. Which is, by the way, how he has had to walk all of his life. He had to walk by himself in the palace. He had to walk by himself in Midian. And as the shepherd of the Hebrews, he's pretty much also walked by himself. I can tell you this guy he's tired, and it's ready. It's time to give this over to Joshua and to Caleb. In verse 37, I've already really taught on this, but I want to go back. I just want to read the verses. Also because of you, Yudhevave was angry with me and said, "You too will not go in there. Yehoshua the son of Nun, your assistant, will go in there. So encourage him, because he will enable Israel to take possession of it. Moreover, your little ones, who you said would be taken as booty, and your children, who don't yet know good from bad, they will go in there. I will give it to them, and they will take possession of it. But as for you, turn around and head into the desert of the road of the Sif, which is basically, we could translate this into turn around and head into your death sentence." That's what they were doing. They were heading out into the wilderness to the sentence to receive that sentence of death upon their lives. And it would not be until, and I mean, I wish that I knew, were those deaths, more of them immediate? Were they toward the end? Was it just kind of natural along the way? I don't know if I've read anything that is, in my opinion, credible regarding that. But to be laying there on your bed, your deathbed, knowing that you could what you could have been, that there was no reason why you couldn't have gone in, but yet your children are going. See, they could have led their children into the promised land, but instead they are the obstacle for the children entering into the promised land. That's a statement. Wasn't in my notes. Instead of leading, I gotta say that again, just remember it. Instead of leading their children into the promised land, they were now the obstacle for the children going into the promised land. Should be asking ourselves a question in this. Are we setting ourselves up in the place to lead our children and grandchildren into the promises, not just the land, but the full promises of the Almighty? Or are we an obstacle to that process? That's a rough question. So, in chapter 3, this is going to be a little bit short today. My apologies. In chapter 3, verse 18, at that time I gave you this order, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your Elohim has given you this land to possess. Now, this is speaking to Gad and Reuben and the half-tribe of Manasseh. I got that. But it is the overlying promise that's being given to all of Israel. The issue is that the possession of the land has never been fulfilled. Even at the time of Joshua, it was not fulfilled. Joshua did a pretty good job. In the end, Dan does not possess, not occupy, but possess Gaza. I mean, we're dealing with that today. Thousands of years later, we're dealing with with what Dan refused to do, is possess the area of the Philistines, the oppressors. That's what that word means. So today, once again, I mean, I will visit the sins of your ancestors. Yeah, visit you with them. That's happening in our day right now. Is there anyone on the horizon? Again, I don't believe that there is a physical or a political solution to a spiritual problem. I don't know what's going to happen in the coming days any more than anybody else does. One of my favorite rabbinic statements you've heard me say is, no one knows what is to be until it is. So I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, the next day, the 9th of Av. But it doesn't really matter what is happening then. What matters is what I'm doing today to affect that day. And maybe in this broadcast, maybe in the past weekend in Rossville or somewhere along the way, myself, Hanok, we've said something that will affect somebody's life in such a way that they begin to turn their heart toward home. And in doing so, become part of the solution, part of the process of these days that we're in. So, be part of the process. And that begins really with possessing what you're being told to possess. In your own family, in your homes. Take those promises that He has given to us and possess them. When it says, do not fear, little flock, then possess that. When it says, seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you, possess that. Okay, make these things yours today. Don't wait until the next week or the next month to go, oh, I need to, trust in Adonai with all my heart, soul, and strength. I need to do that. No, we need to possess that today. If we'll possess His promises today, they will guide us through tomorrow. I'll leave you with that. Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov. Have a blessed, prosperous week. Bezrat Hashem, God willing. See you again next week. Again, thank you all for those that support us, the ministry, support Israel through us. It was just such an amazing thing. Last week I had 3 pretty major requests, and it was like, done, take care of it. And I just have no words to tell you how much I how much I appreciate your trust in making these things possible for what we do. All right, I didn't say that real well, but kind of mixed up with some emotional things at the moment when I think about it. All right, till next week, be strong.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha Shalom.